Hey guys, back with episode number 2 of the RS660 build series. I'm going to try to do these as just one takes real fast. I did a lot of work. It's hard to kind of film and work at the same time. So what I think I'm going to do, and after this, I'm going to have a buddy come in and help me out with some of the heavy lifting as far as the rear end goes, front end goes. And I don't entirely know if he'd be down with being filmed, and it might just be weird. So I'm just going to kind of go over what I'm doing on each step after the fact, more or less, and then kind of just explain where I was or where I am, and then where I'm going on the next one. So this one, you'll notice the bike's a little different. Front end's more torn down. We'll start at the back here. I just quickly took off the rear heat shields for the exhaust. That's gonna have to come off. What I think I'm gonna do here for the rear end is just do a little scissor jack. I was trying to figure out if I could lift the rear end from the subframe. I think it might just be better just to do a little scissor jack with some boards or a piece of wood underneath here and kind of take some weight off the rear end, off the swing arm. That way we're not, hanging contraptions from the ceiling. I was thinking about engine hoist or something like a ladder that you could strap things to. I don't think I'm gonna go that way. I think the easiest way is scissor jack under here, just kind of lift it up, get a little bit of the pressure off the shock mount bolts, off the swing arm pivot bolt. That way I can pull that stuff and do that. So pulled that in preparation for that. You'll notice the side panels here and the radiators are off. That's pretty easy. There's a bolt here, the 2 radiator panel bolts. And again, I had to take off the radiator guard that I initially put on there to, because that was held on by those bolts. The front end, I was a little worried. I had a 210 and I did a build on that, and the front end of that thing was a disaster. I don't know if I did it wrong or what happened there, but man, it came apart in a million pieces. This front end, I was thinking about just leaving the street stuff on it because I'm gonna put some street miles on this bike after I do the majority of the build, just kind of break it in a little bit. So I was kind of not wanting to take the top end off, and I was like, you know what, it's gonna be easier to get to the top triples, to the brake lines, etc. Super easy. There's 2 Phillips heads on either side. Obviously you got the mirror mounts here which hold it in, so you pull the mirrors off, 10mm I believe it is underneath, and then the 2 Phillips heads here, and then the headlight plug, and then the whole thing just slides off as one. Headlights, plastics, windscreen, everything just slides off. And it's super easy. So you'll notice that's off, the side panels are off. I went ahead and pulled the brake calipers in preparation for the brake line swap. What I wanted to do was, I didn't necessarily want to bleed them or pull the fluid out while it was on, because I didn't want to risk getting fluid on the wheel. So I pulled the caliper, and if you notice, just a little trick I do is I put a little piece of tape on the wheel because I pulled calipers and it's just scratched the wheel. So you pull it, I put a little piece of blue painter's tape here, you pull it, you kind of pivot the caliper out, and it kind of spreads the pads a little bit as you're doing it. And then it does rub a little bit, but with that tape, it keeps it from marring the actual wheel surface. So I pulled that, and then in my infinite wisdom here, I went to pull the 8mm bleed screw on the calipers. So I pulled both calipers off, and I was holding it over a jar with brake fluid, and I went and I pumped the lever. Of course, as you know, there's nothing to stop the pads from squeezing together. So I ended up squeezing the pads together and had to pull the pads and then push the pistons back in to the caliper, which was fine because it ended up getting more fluid out anyway. So, calipers down here, once you pull it out, here's the bleed screw area up here. I had to pull the pads and then push the pistons back up in there, and it ended up taking a lot of the fluid out of the caliper anyway, so that was nice because I'm gonna have to rebleed the whole system once I put the single piece lines with no ABS delete. So again, on this side, pulled the radiator shroud with the overflow tank. Easiest thing for me that I found was you pull the bottom line and let it drain into a container, and then you can pull the whole thing. and it comes off as one. There's still fluid in the radiator itself, which I'm gonna have to pull the radiator off to get to the exhaust down there. And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. Both calipers are off, both side panels are off, the front of the plastics are off here. And now we're kind of ready. Next step I think we're gonna do the rear end. I think we're gonna pull the shock, do the rear sets, and I'm gonna leave the stock exhaust on for that because I'm using the Cat as a jack point for that. So things are progressing along pretty nice. It's actually coming apart pretty easy, and it's a super intuitive bike to work on. I pulled the horn here, but the horn mount also is the radiator mount, so I couldn't pull that whole bracket off. So yeah, the rear end, shock, rear sets, and then we'll move to the front. I'm gonna pull the radiator. I gotta pull the airbox because we've got the evap canister deletes and the pair valve deletes from Jet Prime. So all the emission stuff's gonna come off, but you gotta kind of get under the airbox for that. Super easy to get to. You gotta pull the intake wire here, the MAF sensor it is, I think. Is that right? MAF sensor. And then you pull the top of the airbox, pull out the velocity stacks, the whole airbox comes off, and then you can get to the emission stuff down here. At the same time, I'm gonna pull the radiator, drain the fluid out of that, and then we can get to the exhaust, replace some radiator hoses with some Samco hoses, also pull the ABS lines while we're in there. So all this stuff is kind of up under there, and it's kind of a necessary evil to pull the radiator off to get to it all, which is fine. It's gonna make it easy, I think. Pull all the ABS lines, start putting stuff back together at that point. We're gonna put straight lines in, the evap stuff's gonna be gone. It'll be easy to get to the exhaust. There's 2 exhaust flange bolts for each pipe, so a total of 4. And then it routes down, the SC Project routes down under here. There's a mount under here. The stock exhaust is a solid single piece. I didn't realize that. So the header comes off and it goes straight back to the Cat. And then there's 2 tiny little dumps here. 1 solid piece. So that's gonna come off as 1 piece. That's gonna go straight in the garbage because why would I keep that? Yeah, so coming along nice. The bike's pretty well torn apart. Once we get the radiator pulled off, then it's pretty much just, you're starting to put everything back together. So that's where I'm at. Like I said, I don't know how much work I'll be filming just because I've got a buddy coming over and helping me out for the next process of it. Kind of a 2-handed process. I could probably do it by myself, but he knows his way around bikes a little bit better than I do. So it's gonna ensure that I don't mess it up, which is not where I'm wanting to be. Certainly don't want to mess things up. So just an update on that. Probably round 2, just pulling some more stuff apart. Again, pretty easy. Oh yeah, pull the forks and then top triple clip-ons, and then it starts going back together. I am gonna put some street miles on it, so all the street stuff's gonna go back on there, and we'll get some street miles on it before I start taking it to the track. That's all I got for you. Thanks for watching.